So this morning we're going to do a little bit different. We will be finishing Revelation 19, but we're going to actually start at verse 17 and read through the end of the chapter, and then we're going to go back and kind of look at things. But what I want to really share with you that we need to have a perspective of, or get our mindset of before we read this, is that we need to read this from a Jewish perspective. And the reason why we need to read this from a Jewish perspective is then we will hear the voice of the Lord speaking to us. And what I mean by that is, I've been really hung up on Revelation 19. I thought this was going to be my easiest chapter to study. This has been my hardest because I was trying to read it from the perspective of David and not from the perspective of God and the Israelites. And so when I began to read from that this morning, God began to show me a couple of things that is really, really interesting when we look at these things. So let's go ahead and read it, and I'll explain what I'm talking about in just a moment. So the rest of the chapter will not be up here, but starting at verse 17 it will be, because I was not intending to do it this way this morning. So Revelation 19, verse 17. Then I saw an angel standing in the sun, and he cried with a loud voice, saying to all the birds that fly in the midst of heaven, "Come and gather together for the supper of the great God, that you may eat the flesh of kings, the flesh of captains, the flesh of mighty men, the flesh of horses, and of those who sit on them, and the flesh of all people, free and slave, both small and great. And I saw the beasts, the kings of the earth, and their armies gathered together to make war against him who sat on the horse and against his army. Then the beast was captured, and with him the false prophet, who worked signs in his presence, by which he deceived those who received the mark of the beast and those who worshipped his image. These two were cast alive in the lake of fire, burning with brimstone. And the rest were killed with a sword which proceeded from the mouth of him who sat on the horse. And all the birds were filled with their flesh." So when you begin to read Revelation 19 and you go through that chapter, you'll notice that it's actually written in like three different parts, if you will. The first one we know is about the marriage supper of the Lamb. The second one is the second coming of Christ. And the third one is the Great War, which we will look at later on by the Gog and Magog War. So depending on your relationship with God will determine how you read Revelation 19. And sometimes it can get a little confusing because of your relationship with God. Trying to read it from that perspective, when you read it from a perspective that you do not know God, but yet you are a Jew, then maybe things begin to fall into place and make sense. And I will show you what that means this morning. So first and foremost, let's start from the very beginning. During Genesis 1, God said that he made everything for a purpose, and specifically the sun and moon and stars. And he said, I made them not to just make it look pretty and just to give light, but he said, I made the sun and moon and stars for times and seasons. And without the Jewish perspective, that flies out the door and nothing else will make sense. But when you add that and underlie the whole rest of the chapter on times and seasons, then I'll share with you things begin to make sense in Revelation 19. So to go a little bit further with that, Jesus said, you will not know the day or hour he returns. But what he said is, you better know the season. You better know the times that we are in, and you better know the seasons that we are in. And when you know the times and the seasons, then you begin to see how things begin to line up from the perspective that he is giving it. And so one final thing in Revelation 1:1, it said that he sent and signified it by his word to John, meaning the book of Revelation, this whole vision. He sent and signified it. So that word signified means to be a sign of things. And Revelation is a sign of things to come. So where it gets very difficult for us is this. When we read Revelation 19, what are we taking literal and what are we taking symbolically? And it's hard to decipher sometimes because you can go from literal to symbolically in a moment of an eye. I mean, I'm talking in one scripture it's literal, the next one is symbolic. So what you've got to do is look at the context that the verse is in. For example, we read about how fireballs would come in upon the earth. Is that meaning asteroids or meteorites, or does it mean missiles and bombs? Well, if the context is of natural disasters, then we know it's going to be stars falling to the earth. If it's in a context of violence and war, then of course we probably will know that it means missiles and bombs. Well, we have to understand that with Revelation 19. So I'm going to go a little bit deeper here. A lot of stuff I'm going to share with you this morning is not going to be up here or in your handouts because the Lord gave all this to me this morning. But I want you to hear and hear well. So last week I kind of shared with my perspective on the horses. And I'll be honest with you, this is where my hiccup has been, Revelation 19. I have not been able to get past that because I'm stuck on the horses. And so what I want to share with you this morning is let's look at horses from a Jewish perspective. So let me share a couple areas I was just hiccuping on with these horses. And the first one was this. We're in modern times right now. And when we're thinking of the wars that we're reading about in the Gog and Magog war of Armageddon, it's hard to imagine these millions of people, this humongous army coming against God and Israel on horseback. When we have tanks and planes and missiles, and when you've been in that, it's hard to imagine here comes a guy on a horse when a machine gun can easily take him out. So it's not a far-fetched or a thought that, perhaps at this time frame, technology that we know it right now will be obsolete because of EMPs, because of just taking out so much stuff that we are dependent upon today, where we could have to go back to horseback. But maybe, just maybe, there's a little bit more involved in this. And so I wanted to look at, just for my own sake, which I will share today, when was the last time we've actually seen horses in war? Actually, in 1942, April of 1942, the 4th Cavalry U.S. Army dismantled themselves at that time. That's when they were dismantled. April of 1942, the 4th Cavalry U.S. Army Division was dismantled. And I read a story, a quick one this morning, how actually when people were there watching this ceremony take place, they were they were crying a lot because they were so in tune with those horses. They were like you see canines today. That is their battle buddy. And so these horses were also their battle buddies. And so to dismantle at that point, some of them actually lost their identities. So we see a lot of identity with the horses. Now, next, in 2001 and 2002, which a lot of people do not know, but the U.S. Special Forces actually used horses in Afghanistan. And it's the special forces were using the horses because where they had to go to get surveillance and other things, vehicles could not go there. And trying to trek where they had to trek was very dangerous for them and took a lot longer than it would on horseback. So even in 2001 and 2 in Afghanistan, our special forces were using them. That is all we'll go with that because there's other secret stuff that I'm not going to get into with that. But anyway, yes, in small amounts, the United States Army will use horses, but in very small amounts. But guys, here we're reading about a huge army of horses. And is it symbolic? Is it not symbolic? Well, when you hear about the birds eating the flesh of the horses, well, birds don't eat metal, so we know it's not today's technology. It's not tanks that the birds will be eating, so it's got to be real horses. And so what I'm feeling that we're seeing on this side of it is this. When John is seeing everything taking place, right? Now, yes, I'm sure he probably did see some modernized weapons that he could not even describe or understand at his time. So what I believe God was doing on this side of it was he was trying to reveal to John what he was seeing in this time frame. In other words, if he was just seeing a lot of people just attacking each other, it could have been civil unrest to John. But it wouldn't have come to him that this is a world war that is taking place against Jesus and his people. So therefore, when God has given John the vision, he's given it to him symbolically with these horses because he could now attach the horses and the riders to an army. And so now it's a huge army of armies on horseback, letting John know, okay, this is a war of nations going against Jesus and his people. Now, one more thing before we get even deeper with this is, even then and even now, there's a lot of Jews that do not believe that Jesus, Yeshua, is the Messiah. And so when we read this, notice that John didn't say, and I saw Yeshua on the horse coming with his people on horses. Because the Jews that are against Jesus being Messiah will probably just read that and go, you know what, I'm not going to read anything else because this is a fairy tale. But when he does not add Jesus' name, which really brought up an interesting thought with this, because I had a question, why we know this is Jesus. John knew this is Jesus. Why did not John write in here, and I saw Yeshua riding on a horse? Well, again, because the Jews would have like, nah, I'm not going to read the rest of this. But if John will come from his perspective as a Jew, knowing that his brothers and sisters do not believe Jesus is the Messiah, instead of saying, I saw Yeshua, what he will say is he'll begin to describe who the rider on the horse is. And then when they begin to hear, which I'm going to share with you in just a moment, it's mind-blowing, but when he begins to share little tidbits of detail who this rider on the horse is, then they'll be like, he's talking about the Messiah. This is the Messiah he's talking about. We need to study more into who this is. We know that this is the Messiah now that John is talking about, and this is the end time, so this is talking about the Messiah's second return. So now he's captivated their attention, and now he can go forth and allow the Holy Spirit to reveal himself to the people. So that part I feel good about. But this next part, I was wanting to just skip this and go on, but I can't. The Holy Spirit would not allow me to. Jesus is seen on a horse in the clouds with his people, meaning the horses are flying. Have you ever seen a flying horse anywhere? Now, we know that, anything is possible with God. And I had a question, Lord, do you have a humongous barn in heaven with, millions of horses up there? And I wasn't feeling right with that. Is the horse symbolic of a cloud? Well, I don't really know for sure. Until the Lord began to really hone me in on something from his perspective and the Jews' perspective. Again, when I told you all that from this morning, you should know the signs and the times of the seasons. How? By the stars, by the moon, and the sun. And again, how they know the festivals are coming. Stars, moon, and the sun. How they know it's a Sabbath. Stars, moon, and sun. So you know what I'm saying with that. And also, we know that when Jesus came the first time, that he fulfilled the first 4 spring feasts. And that was, of course, March, April, May time frame. But yet, there's still 3 more feasts in the fall. That need to be fulfilled, which usually occurs in September and October. Let me say that again, September and October. If you are a Jew and you want to celebrate the Lord's feast, not Israel's feast, but the Lord's feast, what 2 months are you going to be looking for to celebrate these feasts? September and October. Those 3 feasts have not been fulfilled yet, so it just makes sense. If he fulfilled the first 4, he will do what? The last 3. Fulfill them. So, with all that being said, let me go to my next set of notes. Again, will not be up here. So, again, from a Jewish perspective, and again with the Greeks where they were living amongst and all this and that, when we're talking about a flying horse, imagine yourself again, you're a Jew, and you're reading about this flying horse and these flying horses. One thing or one name should come into your mind that will spark your attention and make you a little interested in what you're reading about. And that is, of course, Pegasus. Pegasus is known as the flying horse. And I want to share a couple things that I think is really important with this study this morning. So Pegasus comes from 2 particular words. And again, you won't really hear much in Israel or in Hebrew, but ha, you will. So Pegasus would be a Pegasus, and pacha, it means the chief. Sus means a horse. So the name Pegasus actually means the chief who comes on a horse. It also means the blesser to come quickly. And it also means the divine messenger who brings joy, all coming from Hebrew. So again, when you hear, if you're a Jew, you're reading this, you're hearing about flying horses, now you're thinking of Pegasus, the constellation, not astrology, but astronomy. And you're thinking of Pegasus, the constellation, Pegasus, the chief who comes on a horse, the blesser to come quickly, the divine messenger who brings joy. Now it's starting to make sense. Oh, you're talking about the Messiah now, because he didn't say Yeshua. He's just describing the rider on the horse. Now we're going to talk about Yeshua. So Pegasus, it is a constellation, appears in our night sky, and it just so happens that it appears in the eastern night sky during the months of September and October. And of course, it is always accompanied with the moon, which the moon also is a symbol of Israel. So you have the symbol of Israel being the moon, and you have Pegasus, that is known as the chief who comes on a horse. So that's pretty interesting, right? But we're not done yet. So when you, all the way back to the days of Adam, God told Adam that he had to do what with every creature? He had to name them, right? He had to name every creature. So yes, everything in our life is named. Everything out of creation is named. Not only is the constellation Pegasus named by the Jews, but guess what? The stars that make up Pegasus is also named by the Jews. Now, you think the Jews are sitting up there going, I think we're going to name this one, we're going to name this one? Or do you think maybe, just by maybe, the Holy Spirit inspired them with the names to name these stars? Well, I'll let you decide with this. But how they named them is in the number of the brightest star to the dimmest star. So this is how we're going to look at these in order, from the brightest star in Pegasus to the dimmest star in Pegasus. Now, there is several stars, but there is 7 particular stars that the Jews actually look at that they had named, and I'm going to go over them very quickly. And then we'll go back into the rest of the scriptures, which I don't really have much to expound on, so this is the meat of it right here. So the first star in the constellation Pegasus is Markab. If you're writing notes, it's Markab. And the name Markab actually means returning from afar. Returning from afar. In Hebrew, it seems to be associated with a chariot or a saddle. So Markab means returning from afar on a chariot or on a saddle. And I didn't get enough time to really pronounce these names, so I might be really chopping them up. I apologize. The second one is Chet, S-C-H-E-A-T. You go with that. Chet, however. That star actually means him who goes and returns. The third star, Allenib. A-L-L-E-N-I-B, Allenib. That star means who carries. So just real quick, just in case you're not seeing it yet from this perspective, when you put those 3 stars together, returning from afar, either on a chariot or a saddle, it's him who goes and returns who carries. Let's go a little bit further. The fourth one is Enif, E-N-I-F, Enif. That one is the branch. That's what it means, the branch in Hebrew. The fifth star, Hamam. Hamam. That means destruction. Again, the Lord said we should know the times and the seasons that we are in. Be looking for signs of his return, his second return. 6th star, Matar, which means who causes to overflow. And the last one, number 7, Biham. Biham, B-I-H-A-M, means a flock of kids. So when you look at these meanings of these stars from the brightest to the dimmest, I'll let you decide on yourself, but when you put them all together, it seems that it's actually a little story the Lord is telling us through his signs of the stars. And I'm going to read it twice. I'm going to explain one or two things, and I'll go back and I'm going to read the whole thing again. So when you put them all together, returning from afar on a chariot or a saddle is he who goes and returns, who carries the branch. So in Jeremiah 23:5, Jesus is known as the branch of righteousness. Again, if you were a Hebrew and you heard the branch of righteousness, it would immediately tell you this is the Messiah is pointing to. Bringing destruction, and will cause it to overflow upon his enemies, bringing with him the kids, or the flock of kids. So let me go back and reread this again. Returning from afar on a chariot or a saddle is he who left and returns again, who carries the branch of righteousness, bringing destruction. It will cause it to overflow upon his enemies, bringing with him the children of God. Seeing this sign in September or October in the eastern sky, Jesus said that we need to look in what direction for his coming. The eastern sky. I'll let you take with that what you will, but I believe that there's so much imagery, so much hidden revelation and mysteries, not only in his entire Bible, but specifically in Revelation itself. I don't think in our lifetime we could actually search out all the hidden meanings. With that being said, I did not realize that every constellation the Jews have named it just like this, and even their stars, they have all the way back then have named each star, and each star and constellation actually speaks a story of the coming Messiah. I would love at one time to do a whole entire teaching of why that is, not only of what the constellation story means, but in what location of the sky it means as well. It's mind-blowing, guys. So with that being said, let's go back and quickly go over this. Again, it's going to be very quick, but I wanted to share that with you, get us in that perspective to understand we need to read this from the Jewish perspective as God is speaking to the Jews. So, verse 17. Then I saw an angel standing in the sun, and he cried with a loud voice, saying to all the birds that fly in the midst of heaven, come and gather together for the supper of the great God. So a couple of things here. An angel standing in the sun may actually mean that the angel was standing before the sun. That word standing actually has several translations of that word. But no matter what, the angel was able to be seen due to the glory that emanated from him from previously being in God's presence. So what we need to understand from that very thing, regardless how the angel was standing in the sun, on the sun, before the sun, whatever, the glory that emanated from him, from God, is brighter than the sun itself. So what that means to us is we have never seen anything on this earth as bright and glorious as God's glory. Second, mist of heaven in Greek means in the mid-sky. So these birds that the angel is crying out to are actually scavenger birds gathering dew to the great loss of life that's going to come from the battle at Armageddon. The supper of the great God. Now remember, last week before, we heard about another supper, right? The marriage supper of the Lamb. This one is not the marriage supper of the Lamb. There's a whole different supper, and that will be here on earth. And this is a result of the death that will come from this battle. And finally, for verse 17 and 18, it says, those that will suffer death from the battle at Armageddon. Again, Gog and Magog, we'll look at some other point in Ezekiel 30 and 39, is every king, captain, mighty warrior, armies in general, horses, and all those who rejected God and worshiped the beast in his image. So if we're talking millions upon millions of people, and possibly the horses and all of this, that's going to be a great slaughter. And I can imagine how many birds will be at that great slaughter. If you think about it, when you see a dead deer on the side of this road over here, you can have 4, 5, 6 birds all fighting each other over that one carcass. Imagine how many birds we will see. Well, we won't see, praise God, but that will be there at Armageddon to clean up afterwards. Verse 19. And I saw the beast, the kings of the earth and their armies, gathered together to make war against him who sat on the horse and against his army. It is also believed that it's described Jesus' horse as a white horse, which represents a righteous war, that he is fighting a righteous war. In other words, what he is about to do to these enemies is not unjust, but it is very just because it's according to his word. He is a keeper of his word. His word tells us if we disobey him, what will happen to us. Any enemy that comes against God, what will happen to them? And he has to be a man of his word, so therefore it is a very righteous war that Jesus will, I'll say fight, but there's not going to be much of a fight on the other side. So again, this is the scene, of course, again, at Armageddon. This is the final scene on earth before the millennium reign. When we get into Revelation 20 next week, we're going to read about another Gog-Magog war. Well, is this the same one? No. This is a description. Revelation 20 is a description of what's taken place in Revelation 19. I'll explain all of that when we get there. But what we all have to understand is he is eradicating evilness upon this planet so that he can reign for 1,000 years during the millennium reign so that there is peace upon this earth. That's what this is all about right here. And it appears that these kings and armies will be attacking the nation of Israel. But however, we've got to understand, ultimately it will be Jesus that they will be declaring war against. And verse 20. Then the beast was captured, and with him the false prophet who worked signs in his presence, by which he deceived those who received the mark of the beast and those who worshipped his image. These two were cast alive in the lake of fire, burning with brimstone. This one should give us chills. The beast here, of course, we know is a reference to the Antichrist. The Antichrist, along with the false prophet, will be cast alive into the lake of fire. So these two will not be killed, but will be cast alive, so everyone else will see firsthand what awaits them who followed the lead of the Antichrist and the false prophet. So as everyone is seeing this taking place, they know what's next for them. Cast alive shows that these two will be human, that they're not angels or any other spiritual forms, because those angels and spiritual forms do not die. Humans die. So it shows that these two, the false prophet and the Antichrist, will actually be humans. And finally in this one, brimstone in the Greek refers to sulfur. So not only will it burn immensely, but the stench will be overpowering as well. So, you know, if you ever felt the burn of something, of course it stings. But if you ever have to smell what sulfur smells like burning, it is atrocious. So what this is saying is that the lake of fire is going to be atrocious on every level of our senses, of their senses. So finally, we will wrap it up with verse 21. It says, and the rest were killed with a sword which proceeded from the mouth of him who sat on the horse, and all the birds were filled with their flesh. The rest refers to those who oppose Christ, that will be killed with the truth of who he is and the truth of his word, as well as the judgments that are contained with it. The birds were filled with their flesh, speaks of the innumerable amount of bodies. And finally, from this battle, it will take 7 months to bury the corpses of the dead, which I'm going to show you in a minute. Perhaps not all the bodies will be completely consumed by the birds, since it states that all the birds were filled with their flesh. I don't know if there's enough birds to be able to fulfill their appetite at the Battle of Armageddon. But notice what Ezekiel 39:12 says that speaks of this actual war. For 7 months, the house of Israel will be burying them in order to cleanse the land. We know in Revelation 20, when it speaks of the Gog-Magog war, it's not this one, because immediately after the Revelation 20 war, which is the ultimate final war, is when the earth is passed away, is burned away. So why would they have to cleanse the land if God is going to do it for us? So therefore, we know that the Gog-Magog of Ezekiel 30 and 39 speaks of the war at Armageddon, which will happen right at Christ's return, that will set the stage for the millennium reign, where Christ and us we will reign with Christ in complete and total peace. So, that's it in a nutshell. Praise God, we're done with Revelation 19. That was hard. But anyway, what we have to continue to look at as we go forward is reading the rest of these chapters from a Jewish perspective, because there's going to be a lot of symbolism, especially in 21 and 22, that is not going to make a lot of sense from our perspective, because we don't understand what some of these things mean. But from a Jewish perspective, hearing about particular stones will make a lot of sense to them, because they remember where they have seen stones previously. And of course, just certain things like that. So anyway, praise God. We're about to go in Revelation 20, and then after that, we got 21, 22, and the study will be done. Then we're going to do it all over again. No, joking. I am joking. No, we're not, because Jesus is coming. Amen.